Hi everyone. So today this is a supplemental lecture 4 that has to do with functions, and this particular video is on using functions in Excel. So I'm going to do two things. I'm going to first talk through the example of a couple functions that are in Excel, and then I'm going to do the activity where we use some functions. I'm going to show you that as an example. So here I've pulled up Excel, and this is lecture 4 example functions file, and I'm going to highlight a couple relevant functions. Before I highlight them, I want to show you, if you click to follow this link at the top of the page, it will open a web page which is part of the Excel documentation. If you haven't explored the Excel documentation, I highly recommend it. I'll show you that here real quick. You can go to it at support.office.com/EnglishUS/EN-US/Excel. But if you just Google Excel help, okay, it'll bring up the Excel help. There's all sorts of really good stuff here. Okay, so in functions, okay, I'm going to go back to where I was here. What I'm giving you here is a list of functions by category. So I find that that's a useful thing to look up. So if you're not sure and you're like, I want to know about math functions, you click on math functions, and there's a whole big list here of functions like even or floor or hyperbolic cosine. Okay, that gives you the list of the functions. Then if you click on it, hyperbolic cosine, it will then describe how to call the formula. So we talked a little bit about this in class. Remember that in Excel you say equals. Okay, that tells it it's a formula, and then you type the function name and then parentheses, and you put your argument in there, whether it's a number or a cell or whatever. Okay, so that's enough about the documentation. So what are a couple of the common functions? So, sure, yeah, I can have a cookie. So there's a number of functions that I'm listing here. That are all associated with math and other or math and trigonometry and other kinds of things. So there's, say, the absolute value function, cosine, sine, tangent. There's an integer function, so it finds the nearest integer, the natural log, the log base 10, pi, the number pi, all sorts of other things. Okay, so you can sort of explore through this list and on the list here and look at some common math functions. Pretty useful in Excel is using some statistics. Spreadsheets are often really valuable for doing some simple and basic statistics. So you can do things like count the number of numbers that are in the range A to B. So when I have this A colon B, what I'm saying is some range of values, and we'll explore that in the next one. You can get averages, the maximum value, the minimum value, all of these sorts of things. All right, and if you've had statistics, you'll know what, say, the standard deviation is. If you haven't had statistics, you won't. We won't be diving too deep into statistics in this class, but providing it for you here. There are also logical functions, so we'll be able to use if statements, which we're going to talk about a little more next time. So if this condition is true, if this condition is true, give this value. If it's false, give this value. Count if, so you can do a count, but you can look at the condition and see, hey, only count the ones that are positive, or sum the ones if they're less than some other value. Okay, and then there's date and time functions. You can say, what is it today? What's the date today? Well, today is the 15th of January 2020. Okay. Or you can do now, all right, and now will give you the date and the time. It's almost 7 o'clock. All right, so let's go through and do our activity. I'm going to move my little ugly mug out of the way and zoom in here. So this is a table I've made up, and this says, okay, let's find the current date and time. What was the function to do that? We just saw that. That was now. So equal sign now parentheses. Okay, so notice it doesn't display my formula anymore, it just displays what I said. Okay, sometimes this little guy comes up that says this cell contains a formula and it's not locked to protect it from being changed inadvertently. Alright, so I don't care about that. That's fine. If I wanted to display the equals now, I could put an apostrophe before the equals sign. Okay, now that will display text instead of the formula. It'll display the text of the formula. So now that's just displaying a string for me. Okay, but I wanted to evaluate the formula. There's the current date and time. Alright, so let's go through this list. Let's see what's going on. The total number of days. So how can I get the total number of days? Well, I kind of know that. That's maybe silly. I counted from 1 to 31. But let's use our formulas for practice, or our functions. I can use the count function. So I push equals, okay, well, I'll do that a little more slowly. Equals sign, count, I type out count, and then I open a parentheses. Now I could type C12 colon C, and then look what this one is down here, 42. Okay, notice it highlights it and close parentheses, and it will count 31 days. I typically don't want to look up what those are. It's kind of hard to read. So instead I will put equal sign count, parenthesis, and then I click on that one, and then I press shift and I click on the bottom, and that highlights it. Now if I just press enter, it does a pretty good job, and it actually puts the closing parentheses, parenthesis, I don't know what's the singular of that, parenth, I don't know. It closes the function call for me, right? Some other things I can do equal count, open parentheses, and then I can highlight and scroll down. Okay, that gets a little hard when it's a little longer, then I have to scroll down the page, but that still works. I can also close the parentheses and press enter, and that works. Okay, so there's a couple different ways. The average summer high temperature. All right. So this says summer daily month high temperatures. So I just want the average of all of those. Average. So average. Now I click that one. I'm going to scroll down a little bit and hold shift and click the bottom corner, and that highlights all three columns. I'll close the parentheses and hit enter. And voila, it says 87.6 degrees. Okay. The standard deviation. So that one was equal sign, and it was STDEV, open parentheses. And I click again, click down here, close the parentheses, and hit enter. Right? It says the standard deviation is 5.4. Notice something kind of interesting. There's a blank spot there. All right, Excel is nice to you, and if it's blank and I highlighted all of it, it's just going to ignore that. So notice if I put a 0 instead in there, now it will change these numbers. Look, my standard deviation went up, and my average high went down to 86 instead of 87.6. Okay, so now I deleted it and went back. I put the 0, and then it went back. Okay, so when it's doing when it's doing that calculation, okay, it is ignoring that box if I don't have anything in it. That's pretty nice to do. I'm pretty sure it's doing that on the average, although I'm a little nervous now. I wasn't sure that I saw. If I did 100, that goes to 87.8. If I go 0, 86.7. If I delete it, 87.6. Oh, that was tricking me because it was 7 and the 6. But yeah, it just ignores it if it's 0. All right. So now, what is the highest daily summer temperature? Well, that was our maximum function. So equal max, and I do the same thing. Highlight this, close. 100 was the maximum. Right there, August 1. What is the lowest? That one's min. Okay. And the most frequent, that one's kind of interesting. How do I go about getting the most frequent value? I go back and look here. That's the mode. The mode is the most frequent value. So I can do mode, oops, open parentheses, scroll down here, close parentheses. There we go. 86 was the most frequent value. Okay, so now these last two are a little more complicated than just these. I have to use these other functions that were a little bit harder to do. I'm going to use Countif for this one. So this says the number of days that are 90 plus. So this is equal Countif, open parentheses. I'm going to give it the same range. Okay. And if I do that, it says, if I just do Countif, it says you've entered too few arguments for this function. So how do I do Countif? Well, let me go up here and let's look through how to do Countif using the documentation. So logical functions. Let's see if it's in logic. Not in there. Let me just. Can we search it here? We'll just try this. We'll do Excel Countif help. Google it. Excel Countif. There it is right there. Okay. This is the Countif function. It says it was under, it just says formulas and functions. It didn't tell me which one it was. Under, I thought maybe we'd find it that way. Bummer. Alright, Countif function. Alright, so it says Countif, and then it has where do you want to look and what do you want to look for. So two things separated by a comma. So the first is the range. So that's just like we had before. And the second one was, say, London. So this would be Countif if they're all exactly equal to London. But we don't want just equal to. We wanted something that was greater than. So we can use this example right here. We put it in double quotes and we put a greater than. And this will count the number of cells with a value greater than 55. Aha, that's exactly what we want to do. So close that out. Oops. We want to do equals Countif, open parentheses, select this one, select that one, comma, and we said greater than 90, 90 plus. So maybe greater than or equal to 90. Close parentheses, enter. And that tells us 29. Okay, so now a number of days in the 80s. Okay, well, is there a way to do that? So this says, this one's the trickiest one, okay? I can only do one thing that I want to be able to tell. So I'm going to have to be a little bit tricky here. I'm going to say the number of days in the 80s. Well, if it's greater than or equal to 80, then that will give me something. So let me do that down here. A equals Countif. All of these guys are greater than or equal to 80. Okay, but that one's also counting everything in the 90s and the hundreds. So let me have this one be everything that's 90 plus. Well, that's right there. Okay, so the number of days in the 80s is going to be the ones that are greater than or equal to 80, but less than 90 plus. So I'm going to take that and subtract that one. So I'm going to say the number of days in the 80s. This is equal to Countif. This one to this one, comma, greater than or equal to 80. What did I forget? Oh, forgot to close my parentheses. It says, we found a typo in your formula. Do you want to accept this correction? No, I don't want to accept it. Okay, I want to fix it myself. Right there, enter 89. And then now I need to subtract this cell, 29. That tells me 60 days. 60 days in the 80s. Now I just realized something. The first one I had the total number of days, and I said there were 31. That's wrong. Maybe you caught that. I didn't catch it right away. What I want to do is count these days. I want to count how many of these ones there are. So that means I want to not just count. Let's come over here. Now notice I can correct that formula. I did that too quick maybe. Come back here. Undid what I just did. Okay. One way I can correct if I want to change the range, I can just grab the box and pull it over. And also I can go grab these corners up here and slide them over. And then look, it's just changed automatically. I hit enter. And how many days is it? It's 92 days. That makes a lot more sense, right? 92 days was 31 and 31. That's 62, and then 30 days in June makes 92. All right, so that's how we did this example. I hope that's useful to you to see that worked out and to see how to use functions in Excel.